Hello, very big warm welcome to the Toon Under podcast, and a big welcome back to Dimi, who has become a dad in the last 10 weeks or so. Dimi, how are you? You surviving?
Surviving, just about. Sleep deprivation is definitely a real thing. I thought I'd be flying through with my lack of sleep with watching sports from around the globe, but this sleep deprivation has been a little bit harder to get over, especially when you actually have to look after someone, not just watch a TV. So that's obviously the main difference. But no, it's going well. He's going good. Obviously, it helps with the football at the moment with the Euros and a few bits and pieces. But now we're getting through, and I think we're hopefully past the hard time. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's only 10 weeks in, but
Yeah. But I was saying off air before. I remember when my eldest daughter was born, it was 2020 and it was June, so I was excited about being able to watch the Euros through the night. And then it got cancelled because of COVID, so I was totally cheated out of a paternity leave with the Euros on. But yeah, you're used to sort of being up in the nighttime, aren't you? So, but like I said, it is a bit different. You have to sort of I still do it now. I'm going into the bedrooms and having my laptop on, try and watch the football, and then trying to rock the baby and stuff at the same time.
yeah.
So yeah, it's the way it
It's
goes.
different. It's definitely different. I mean, when you're watching the football, you just focus on the football. But obviously, if you're watching something else and you've got to hold the baby or burp the baby, it's a little bit your focus has to be a little bit slightly off the football. Let's just say.
Yeah, and it's not great when you really want to concentrate on it as well. Like that would be the
Clearly
one.
not. Like, it was a moment. I think I was watching. What game was it? It was Holland Turkey the other night, and Turkey scored off a corner. I was burping him, and I sort of went to jump, but I had to sort of hold myself. I'm like, oh shit, I can't celebrate. I'm not that I'm celebrating Turkey scoring, but I thought, oh wow, what a moment. And I'm like, oh, no, got a baby, just gotta control myself.
I still remember one of the greatest goals that we've had post takeover was Kieran Trippier's free kick against Everton. It was a morning game, so I was about to go to work, and I was in the middle of changing one of the kids' nappies right at that moment, and I was like, I'll always remember that because it was such an iconic goal, and I was in the middle of being a full on dad at that time. So now it's fun and games. It's fun and games. But what we're gonna do today is we're gonna talk a little bit about Paul Mitchell, who joined the club very suddenly last week. The dust has settled a little bit after that PSR panic that we had. And we're also going to go through the squad a little bit, position by position, and do a little bit of an audit on the squad and where we think we might go from there. But yeah, it's been quite nice. It's been a calmer week after the absolute madness that was the weekend before that. How are you feeling now about everything now that the dust has sort of settled on that and things have calmed down a little bit and Newcastle have been out of the news a bit since then, which has been quite nice, I guess. But yeah, what's your thoughts and how do you reflect on that period now?
Well, obviously, it's a lot better now. I mean, I heard Keys what he said on the show the other night. He said it was sort of a little bit reminiscent of the Andy Carroll moment when we sold him to Liverpool. And I remember watching the Sky Sports ticker go and say, "Oh, Carroll's in Liverpool," or bid has been accepted, and sort of stressing about, is he going to be sold? Is he not going to be sold? This was, I mean, slightly different. We weren't stressing about the players that were going to be sold, but we're sort of stressing about if we don't sell them, then we might have a points penalty. So, I mean, the whole PSRs are fast. We've talked about it before, but now that we're through it, it's obviously fantastic for us. We can sort of turn the page. The new financial year's come around. There's all these new sponsorship deals that start to kick in, and obviously the news last week, which we'll talk about in a moment with Paul Mitchell. It's sort of come out of nowhere, and they're the best appointments and the best signings that we make when there's no talk about it. There's no ITKs, not even reputable journalists are reporting it, and then all of a sudden Newcastle just post, we've now appointed our new football director. So that's definitely calmed the mood on Tyneside, and hopefully long may continue.
Yeah, that was a very interesting announcement, and like you said, it was Thursday night for us, so it was Thursday morning, so it was what sort of like 3 or 4 days after this, all of that madness had gone on, and I was kind of thinking, I wonder if Darren Eales is going to come out and make some kind of statement or talk about what had happened, and Mark Douglas, one of the journalists, had said that he'd been indicated that would happen. But then, like you said, completely out of the blue from nowhere, Paul Mitchell was appointed. This was a name that we had been linked with before at the beginning of this director of football. I think his official title is sporting director, actually. So he had been linked before. He's got a good reputation from the continent and from Europe, from the UK as well. It reminded me of the announcement a little bit of Sylvain Marveau. I don't know if you remember him when he said,
yeah.
But for us in the UK, it was the middle of the night. For some reason, it was announced in the middle of the night, and no one knew anything about it. And this was kind of similar, just completely out of the blue, came from nowhere. Bang, there you go. And it was timely as well, because people had started to ask questions about what's going on with the director of football. We've got the Dougie Freedman rejection it was at least 4 or 5 weeks ago now, and nothing had happened since then. So it all went very quiet. But what do we know, Dimi, about Paul Mitchell and the work he's done so far, and what he might have been brought in to do?
Yeah, obviously his reputation in the game is fantastic. He's obviously got that history as well with the Premier League, which is going to be very, very beneficial for us. Obviously, his work at Southampton, I think Mane was one of his top signings that he got to Southampton before Liverpool pinched him, and he did some work at Spurs as well. I think we got Son into the Premier League, which was huge. So his reputation obviously is enormous, because a lot of clubs were chasing him. I mean, you can only see a few tweets now back 3 or 4 months ago. You can see Man United fans talking about, oh, we want Paul Mitchell. He's the man for us. So, I mean, his work at Leipzig have got a lot of great young players. Monaco as well have got a reputation for developing and finding sort of diamonds in the rough. So I think it's a very shrewd appointment for us. We've sort of kept our roots in terms of someone who knows the English game, but also someone who's now got a reputation amongst the continent, who may not be obviously at your biggest clubs around Europe, but he's got form finding players and finding world-class players, really. So that's probably the position we're in. We need someone like him who can sort of identify a talent and sort of we can nurture that, because we're not in the game with Man City or Real Madrid to spend 100 million, 150 million. So we probably have to be a little bit more not risky, but a little bit carefuler with our money, and maybe take a punt that potentially we may not need to when we're more cashed up and we're 3 or 4 years down the line. So I think he's the perfect appointment for that. He's got the Premier League experience. He's also got that continent experience, which hopefully will only benefit us in the next couple of windows at least.
You mentioned Man U there. It is funny. They've gone for Ashworth, who they've ended up giving us in excess of £10 million for, and they apparently wanted Mitchell to be like underneath Ashworth or something, so some kind of scouting role. So they've basically paid us for that. We've gone and got him, and there's been no compensation for it. So it's sort of like there's a lot of stuff going around about how we've absolutely pulled the pants down there. And I think with Ashworth we've done well to get that much money. Like I know that we didn't want to lose him necessarily, but we had to in the end for the PSR money and stuff. But I think to get that much money, which, like I said last week, it's 5 times more than anyone's ever sold a director of football for.
He's a staff member. He's a staff member. It's not like we're selling a striker or we're selling a midfielder. He's a staff member. So the fact we got 10 million for a staff member is a great. Obviously, Ashworth has a great reputation. He did great things at Brighton, obviously at the England FA as well. And we were hoping he was going to be a long-term role, but it didn't work out. That's fine. He's gone with his mate to Man U, and we've got £10 million or $10 million out of it, and now we've got a new sporting director who potentially is someone that is going to be beneficial for us, I think, at least in the next few windows, because he's someone who's more of a scout type, who's going to be involved in the transfer dealings, where Ashworth is probably more wholesale club, fix your youth academy, fix the structures, and get it built from that. Not so much find the player. I think Mitchell will be the one to find the player, or someone who would be ability to have that a lot more than Ashworth probably does.
Yeah, and that was something else I was going to say. He's come from a scouting background, so he was a player. He retired when he was 27 through injury, and he was at MK Dons and places like that.
Yeah,
I think MK Dons had got him his scouting role or some sort of backroom role before he'd even retired. So he's obviously saw that potential in him, and he's done whatever qualifications and things he needs to do to get where he is. When he was at Monaco, it was really interesting. When he went there, they had something like 70, 80 professional contracts on the books at that club. So it was his role to sort of trim that. And then he brought in a couple of really good young players there as well. So at Monaco, he had more of an overall overall view, like of the club. And there was some work they did with Cercle Bruges, who's Monaco's Monaco kind of invest in that club as well in Belgium. But basically, he's got that experience. He is from the scouting background, but maybe he's going to be a bit of a better fit for us than what Ashworth is. And I kind of alluded to this last week as well. I don't know if it's concerning, but it's interesting to think of the reasons why Ashworth didn't feel like he wanted to stay at Newcastle. And it could just be that he knows the Dave Brailsford from Man U and he just wanted to go there and work with them. It could be there was more money, but it could be just that he didn't fancy it. There could have been something at Newcastle that he just didn't like the structure or whatever it was. Certainly Eddie Howe, when he was interviewed around that time, was not very, and it's not like Eddie Howe to be sort of to say anything against anyone, but he was sort of made it clear in that press conference he did that he hadn't been happy with the way things had gone there. So I guess the hope's got to be, Dimi, that he is a better fit for the club and that Howe had been not made the decision, but he's been involved in discussions around this, someone who he thinks he's going to be able to work well with, but also from the club's perspective that another manager in the future, if it doesn't work out with Howe for whatever reason, is going to be able to work well with as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the scouting background for me is the key point because, like I said, we still are under some sort of financial constraint. We do have more money to spend, but we're under some financial constraint. So if we got someone who can identify a talent who maybe today is worth 40 million, but maybe in 3 years is worth 100 million, that's sensational for us. So I think that is going to be a huge benefit for us. Our squad, we'll go through it in a little bit, but our squad isn't too bad. I mean, there's not that many sort of missing links. Obviously, that we do need more world-class players, and the depth obviously got smashed last year with injuries. But the nucleus of this squad finished fourth 2 years ago, and for about 18 months, maybe even 2 years, we're playing at that level from January of the season that Howe came in till essentially the end of the previous season. We're playing at a top four level, so there's definitely a lot to work with, and maybe a sprinkling of 2 or 3 world-class talents, maybe in an Isaac type, someone who has a reputation but hasn't really grasped and sort of met their potential just yet because he's sort of a little bit more unknown. That would be perfect for us. If we can find, if we can find another 1 or 2 players like him, then we're flying. And I think that scouting background is going to be vital for us.
Yeah, so the club's already been making decisions on contracts and things. So we've left Karius has gone, Richie, Dummett, and Hendrick. Their contracts were all up. We're gonna talk through the squad position by position. There is currently 25 players in the squad, and plus 2 under 21s. So that's not including people like Jamal Lewis, Isaac Hayden, Ryan Fraser. So they're all out. They are out of contract in the next season or 2, but we're hoping that they're all going to be. They're kind of the bomb squad now. Like the bomb squad used to be a lot bigger than that when we had Dwight Gale and other people like that who we just didn't want anymore. But that's kind of them now. The 3 first team players, or 3 players with first team experience who can probably go and find new clubs. You've got Harrison Ashby, who's over 21 now as well. So I don't know. He didn't have a great season on loan at Swansea and he was injured a lot. So and it was a bit weird with him. He had it just said his injury was it just said knock. He had a knock for 6 months. So I don't know what's going on there, but
Bad
I'm
corky.
not sure. Yeah, I don't know if he's gonna cut it here, and it might just be one that we kind of loan out or take a loss on. It didn't cost a lot of money, but you've got Garansky, who we're hoping is going to go out onto a decent loan this time because he's still only 18, 19.
Yeah.
So you've got Joe White, who's actually a bit older than you'd think as well. He's pushing 21, 22. So I know he's played a bit towards the end of last season, but that was mainly because there was nobody else. So I don't know if we'll be seeing him. Alex Murphy did quite well when he played. He made a few first-team appearances. He's about 19 now as well. So the young defender, so he could go out on loan. So not including those players, 6 or 7 players, the squad is 25 players. So if we want to be buying players, which we do, definitely, we need to upgrade. As you said, we're going to have to sell some players. Let's look at the goalkeepers first. We've got about 1 million goalkeepers all of a sudden. We've obviously got Nick Pope. Dubravka's still there for how long, who knows. You can say the Greek guy's name. How do you pronounce that?
Vlachodimos.
Vlachodimos. He's there, signed from Forest last week. And then John Ruddy appeared out of nowhere as well. So he's there for the sort of the experience.
Shits and gigs. He's there for shits and gigs. Yeah.
Senior, good trainer. You know, like he's just there for that stuff. Yeah, he has actually got an England cap, him, and he's been a decent top flight goalkeeper. So, and then Mark Gillespie, who was given a new contract. But that just seems a bit like, if you're going to sign John Ruddy, why have you given Mark Gillespie a new contract? I don't know what's going on there.
Very random.
First of all, tell us what you know about Odysseus. Tell us what you know about him first, and then we'll talk a bit about the goalkeeping situation in general.
Yeah, so Vlachodimos obviously didn't have a great time of it at Forest. He was actually very good as a goalkeeper in Greece for my club, Panathinaikos. He obviously made his reputation though in Europe at Benfica, and he was a standout goalkeeper for Benfica. Got him into the Greek national team. He was the number one keeper for a while for Greece. Greece do have a fair few goalkeepers in and around that area, so he hasn't obviously maintained that spot lately because of his form at Forest, and he wasn't playing at the end of the season last year. But he for me is a very solid backup goalkeeper. I'm not sure whether he's a Premier League goalkeeper week in, week out, but he's not going to be someone who I feel is going to let you down. In my book, he's no worse than the Dubravka. He's a very good shot stopper. He's actually quite tall, so he's not the worst in the air either. And on the ball, he's actually quite good. Obviously, playing in Portugal and playing at Benfica, he's going to have to be good at the ball. But they're not going to just lump balls forward. That's not the way they play. So I think he's a good signing. He's someone who's going to be probably happy to be a backup. He's not going to be too kicking up a fuss like Dubravka is about being a starter. So I think that works, and I think he's someone who definitely, if Pope does get injured, I think he will be the number one goalkeeper in that scenario, and he won't let us down. I mean, a lot of people see his form at Forest and think, who's this bloke? We can't pronounce his name. Number one, number two, he's this random Greek goalkeeper. Who is he? But he's definitely not someone who's going to embarrass the shirt. And I mean, I'm sticking my head out here. If he comes in his first game and lets one through his legs, I'm going to look like an idiot. But I think he'll definitely carry on the tradition of Dubby's us and do a good job if he does get called upon. And hopefully he doesn't. Hopefully Pope stays fit. But I think he's definitely a good deputy and someone whose reputation in England especially is not what his actual true quality is and what he's done throughout his career.
Yeah, well, he only played 5 league games, I think it was, for Forest. So that's not a big demographic to have a look at and say this is what he barely played. So there's obviously maybe reasons why that was. Maybe he didn't do well when he did play. But Forest's transfer strategy has not exactly been sensible the last few years. Rubbish. So then they went and got Matt Sells. So there's a bit of concern from us who knows Matt Sells from previously, but he's actually a decent keeper now and he's been in the Belgium squad. So like you said, I feel a bit sad about the way things are going to end with Dubravka because he was such a good player for quite a while. I think him and Maxi basically kept us in the league quite a bit. But he did sort of let things down a bit, and there's a bit of a bitter taste with the Man U thing. Like I don't think anyone, him included, probably expected him to come back after that. We thought that might be made permanent, but that's obviously not worked out. He really wasn't good last season in large parts. Like he played really well in some games, including against Liverpool, where he still conceded 4 goals. So I think it's in everyone's interest if Dubravka moves on, and he will go with thanks, but with a little tinge of regret, I guess, about the way it's ended. John Ruddy, I thought Vlach was going to come in as the third choice, and then by the end of the podcast me and Keegan did, we'd signed John Ruddy as well. So you'd think he's going to be third choice because you only really want to have 3 goalkeepers in the squad because otherwise they're taking up extra squad spaces. So Mark Gillespie's obviously just there to be a mascot again, so that's fine. But there was quite a lot of talk through the Euros and before about what's he called, Mamadashvili, from Valencia, who was going to cost around the 30 million mark. And then there was the James Trafford talk as well. Do you think this is it for goalkeepers now and we're going to go with Pope, with Vlach as number 2 and then John Ruddy as number 3 for the season?
I think so. I think we explored bowl reports. We did explore Trafford. We probably saw him as a developmental goalkeeper, similar to Freddie Woman of yesteryear, who we kept on the books for a long time, hoping he was going to become a number one. If not, we could on-sell him to somebody else. I don't think we need to do that now with Trafford. We've got too many keepers as it is, and we're not going to be selling keepers we just bought. So unless Pope goes, which I don't hear any talk about him leaving, I'd say Trafford talk is over. And yeah, that Georgian keeper, he had a fantastic tournament for Georgia. He's a quality keeper, but there's no way we're buying him just to be number two. So I think he was probably kept in the wings in case someone bid for Pope or Pope was on the way out. But it looks like that's not the case. So I think that'll be business as usual with the keepers we've got at the moment.
Yeah, and I think maybe if we had managed to get Tosin on a free, because we're going to have to spend money on a centre-back now, that might have changed things and we might have been able to go a bit bigger on a goalkeeper. But I think maybe when the club was sitting down year ago, 2 years ago, and planning out the next few transfer windows, I don't think they would have banked on spending big money on a goalkeeper at this stage, because I think Pope's still in prime age. There was a problem, obviously, last season when he got injured, and it was a big problem. So we have to really hope that if we don't sign another goalkeeper, that his shoulder stays in its socket where it's supposed to be, or Vlak is a suitable backup. And let's hope for your sake he is, because you've just sold him there. So that's the goalkeepers. Fullbacks on the books, we've got Trippier, Livramento, Kraft, Target. We've got Lewis Hall, who's under 21, so he doesn't count in the squad numbers, which is good. And then you can also have Dan Burn, who's obviously played a lot over the last few seasons at left back, and Lloyd Kelly as well, who's probably his main position is centre back. That's where he's trained and come through. But he's probably been signed. He can play fullback or centre back as well. He did a kind of a mixture of both for Bournemouth. I think they thought he was best as a centre back.
Yeah.
Trippier, there's been some talk since in the last 6 months. Let's be fair, his form totally dropped off a cliff around December time, and then he got injured. I think there's a bit of, like I said last week, there's a bit of short-term thinking with Trippier, though, because I think he's playing for England at the Euros, and he's playing out of position. He's doing okay. I think there's a bit of short-termism in the idea that we should be looking to sell him. I don't think there's any point in selling him unless it's a big enough bid, because I think he's a standard setter and he's a very senior pro in the club. But do you think this season he's going to go in as backup to Livramento to begin with, or how do you see that right back slot going, or do you think there's a chance Trippier could go?
If Trippier's in our squad by the end of the transfer window, I think he'll be the starting right back. I just can't see Eddie Howe putting him on the bench. He's been our captain because he's obviously Lascelles is the club captain, but he's been our captain for the last year and a half while he was playing. He was playing unbelievable football for a very long time. He was virtually playing every minute of every game for a long period, and he's obviously not the youngest fullback. He's obviously getting on in age, so I wouldn't have an issue in my eyes starting Trippier this season, and then sort of picking and choosing the games that we put Tino in, and sort of drip feeding Tino in. And Tino's got a long career ahead. He's still only young himself, so there's nothing wrong with him being second fiddle at times with Trippier. And like we saw last year, you're going to get injuries, you're going to get suspensions. Tino he's also shown he can play on the left, as Trippier can. He's done that for England as well. So I think if Trippier stays, he would be the starting right back. And I would hazard a guess we're going to keep Trippier unless we get a stupid bid from somewhere. I'm not sure Munich are going to go in for him again. I'm not sure somewhere on the continent will go for him. If anything, the talk is Saudi, but will he go to Saudi? I'm not too sure. So, excuse me. I think Trippier he'll be the starter for us this season.
The other thing is if he wants to go as well, there's talk about if his family's not settled or he's split up from his missus or whatever it is. Who knows about that stuff? But he might want to go, in which case the club would probably listen to offers. But I think you're right. If he stays, he starts at right back. I think the difference is from this season, from last season, though. We were so reliant on him for the season before last and for at the start of last season in terms of the style of play that the team played. So everything went through him, even though he's a right back. He's the most influential player on the pitch most of the time, along with Bruno.
Yeah.
So the problem was when we swapped Tino in for him, it completely changed the way that the team played, because everything in terms of the attacking, the set pieces and everything, the attacking patterns and all of that sort of stuff between Trippier, Miggy and Bruno, they had that little triangle going, and there was a good understanding there. So that was what the problem, I think, partly was. I don't think it was that Tino wasn't trusted. It was just that it would have been such a change to the style of play for the team to not have Trippier playing. But he wasn't there last season in the second half of the season. So I think that's changed things, because I think we can trust Tino to be able to go in, and he brings other things himself. He's got the running power, and he's really good defensively. He's over 10 years younger. He carries the ball. Really well. He's brilliant. He's probably in the England squad at some point soon if he keeps getting game time. So I think when you've got them two and Kraft as a backup, and he can also play centre back, of course. I don't think that's. I think that's pretty good for the right back positions. And I think we really want to be careful about being hasty about saying, let's just get rid of Trippier because he's old. You know, like, he's 34 in September, but fullbacks can sometimes go for a long time, and he's still playing now at a good level, international level. So I think we'll see him back to his best if he comes back, and if his head's in the right place, and if he's recovered after the Euros, he'll be equally a big part of the squad as he has been up till now, I think. Left back's interesting as well. Lewis Hall came in towards the end of the season. He played really well in the last few games. He scored a screaming goal against Man United, and he was good against Brentford as well in the last game. It's interesting, isn't it, left back? Because Dan Burns being in that position, and there was a point last season where he needed to be taken out. He was getting rinsed every week and it was the same pacey players scoring the same goal over and over again. And it wasn't just his fault. He wasn't helped out by Botman being unfit and in and out of the team as well. But it's probably fair to say that Lewis Hall's got the shirt, I think, for left back for next season, even though he's only 19. Would you agree with that? That he's got the starting shirt if he's fit, and if we don't sign any more fullbacks?
I think so. I think he started to come really into his own in the last sort of couple of months of the season, and I think he changes the way we play. I think if we want to be a progressive team and a front foot team, you need to have fullbacks bombing on from both sides. You can't just have Trips or Tino on the one side, and then your left back just sits back because he's 6'7" and he can't get up and back, which is fine. But that's who Burn is. I think Hall helps the way we play football a lot more than obviously Burn does. He obviously doesn't have the height, and the set pieces are one thing that Burn helps with. But I mean, I wouldn't be playing a starting 11, but just based on set pieces. That's just one part of the game. I think you can cover set pieces in a myriad of ways. I think that's not what we should be looking for. I think we should be looking for someone who can overlap on the left, give us better balance on the pitch, someone who can score goals. Again, similar to Tino, he can carry the ball, he dribbles. I mean, he was a midfielder for Chelsea's youth team, so he's not really a natural left back, but he's grown into that position. And I think he's a very exciting talent, and I think for me, he has to be starting game one, pending fitness. He should be starting game one.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying about Trippier, because Dan Burn was good in that position because he would slot in at left centre back and he'd make a back three in a lot of games when Trippier was off right up the wing, having assists and creating goals. So Burn was ideal for that slot back in alongside Botman and Shaw, and then that was the three at the back. But he was exposed really badly quite a few times last season. And there wasn't really anything we could do about it at that point. And Eddie didn't really seem to trust Lewis Hall to play. And when he did play, he chucked him in against Man City and Dortmund. He was
Dortmund away,
big games. But like we were saying consistently through last season, there must be reasons why he's seen something in training that he's not happy with, or he wants to give him a bit more time to develop and learn the style of play. And he made comments to the effect towards the end of the season that he's learning. You know, he's picked it up. His training's getting better. And I think Lewis Hall also made a few comments himself about having to adapt. And you forget, he was very young. He was 18 when he signed, and it's a lot of money. Yeah. We've made that permanent now for 28 million, whatever that is. So, but we've potentially future-proofed that position for a long time to come. Matt Target did well when he first came on loan, and then we signed him, which I don't know if we actually were really wanted to sign him. We obviously did because we did in the end, but it was one that dragged on a little bit. He's apparently on 100k a week, which is a problem because he's going to be, unless he can sort of get himself a place in the squad, get himself fit, and then be that sort of reliable backup, it's going to be hard to move him on as well if he's on those kinds of wages. So what do you see his position being in the squad next season?
I think he's going to struggle, to be honest. We've got, obviously, if we're assuming Lewis Hall is going to be the starter, we've got Dan Burn as a backup. Kelly can play left back. Trippier and Tino can fill in a left back. So we really don't need Target anymore, and especially at those wages. I think we should be trying to get him off the books. There's going to be a Premier League club you'd think who could use Target. I think he's a Premier League left back. He may not be a top 6 or a top 10 Premier League left back, but he did a very good job for us when he was playing. So I think we could get some money for him. We may not get a huge fee, but I think any fee we can get for him, I think would be best. There's no point using another squad spot for a left back. We're going to end up having 6-7 left backs in the squad, and you don't need that many.
Yeah, if those wages are true, though, that's going to be very prohibitive to any move. Like we'll end up stuck with him until, a bit like with Fraser, like he's hopefully going to go to Southampton, but he's on big wages because he was a free transfer, and it's hard to get rid of people who were on that money. And
we had to entice them. I mean, you remember when we got Target in, we were a basket case, and that's why we've got these players in to sort of entice them to come to Newcastle, because we were rubbish and a basket case, like I said. So the only thing we could offer them is a high wage packet. So it worked to get them, but obviously now it hinders us when we've gone past them as a club, as a team. They're hard to flick off the books.
Yeah. Moving on to the centre backs, we've got Botman and Lascelles, who are both injured at the moment, and potentially until around Christmas or the New Year. Although I saw a video of Botman doing some jumps on the grass the other day, so he looks like he's progressing quite well from his surgery. He both had ACL kind of injuries. You got Fabian Schär, who is he was just playing in the Euros until England knocked them out, but he's getting on now. He's 31, 32. You've got Dan Burn and Lloyd Kelly, who obviously can fill in at left back as well. I think we'll probably need to target and sign another centre back this summer. And this is like when I was talking before about them planning out the transfer windows. I think they're probably always planned in this window to go big and get a right-sided centre back who's got some pace, who can be maybe slot in as Schär's sort of backup this season, and then hopefully take over. But it's going to be quite hard to replace what Fabian Schär actually brings in terms of his passing and his availability. He's played almost every game under Eddie Howe as well. But you're looking at them, and 3 of them are over 30. Botman's coming off a bad injury, and Kelly's mid-20s as well. What do you think the club are thinking in terms of the centre-back options, especially considering 2 of them are currently injured?
Yeah, I definitely think centre-back is one area we need to go big and get somebody in. If we did sign Tosin, I still thought we had to sign another centre-back because of the injuries we had. But especially now that we haven't got Tosin, we need to be spending, I think, a fair bit of money on a centre-half. And even if we do get a right centre-half, I think Schär has shown he can play left centre-half at times as well. So there's nothing stopping him keeping his position in the back four and just moving across. But I think getting someone with pace is vital, and someone also who's good on the ball, because we can't just be having Schär the one who carries the ball or sprays passes. We have to have somebody else who can do that, because people will start to block Schär, and if they block Schär and we've got whoever else at centre half who can't pass the ball, that's a problem for us trying to build the ball up, and then that just causes a whole myriad of issues in terms of our offensive play. So I think we need to be spending maybe not half our budget, but at least 30-35% of our budget, maybe $35-40 million or £40 million on a centre half, and hopefully someone who, like you said, can grow into the role and who's not potentially a full-fledged world-class player at this point. But Botman wasn't either. Botman was a hot property, and he's turned into a fantastic centre half. Someone like that, I think, would be the perfect type of signing.
And you've mentioned pace there. That's so important in this position, because nobody else we've got there is quick. Trippier is not the quickest if he's playing right back. And there was big problems last season when Pope was not there to sweep up. Dubravka was glued to his line all the time. So we just caught out so many times with a lack of pace at the back. And it looked like it was all Dan Burns' fault, but it wasn't, because he didn't have anyone next to him who was covering, like when that was happening. So I think, that's definitely going to be an area that will be targeted. We've been linked with Malik Thiaw, who's the German defender at AC Milan. They actually signed him when they didn't get Botman. So we got Botman instead, and then they went for him. So that would be interesting to see what happens. He's 22, German international. So I think someone of that profile who is going to be young enough to develop, get used to the system and the league and things, and then who's going to be ready to step in if Shah gets injured or Shah's out of contract next summer, but I'm assuming he'll get another year or even 2 if he wants them. He's been so important to us. But it will be interesting to see what happens with that. But I definitely think there'll be big money spent on a centre-back of some description. The midfield was, until last week, it was probably the area we didn't have to do anything with, the centre of midfield. Obviously, Anderson has since been sold. We still might not have to do anything with it. It depends how much of a risk we want to take with injuries. We've got Bruno, Joe Linton. Tonali's coming back in end of August, although there was some talk that he got an injury as well in training, but he should be back for, I think it's the Spurs game, end of August, if he's okay. Willock, who obviously missed the vast majority of last season, and I think he was a huge miss last season, and he brings something different in the midfield. Longstaff, who played a lot more football than we hoped he would have to, especially because he was injured himself for a lot of that. So I think we do have to give him a lot of respect for playing through the pain barrier for the club at that time. Lewis Miley is also injured. He's out for 12 weeks with a broken metatarsal, I think it is. So maybe that's because he played so much football last season, much more than we would have hoped for him as well. But he's definitely going to be part of the first team squad, and he's not going to have to be counted in the numbers, the 25-man squad, for about 4 more years or something. He's that young still. So it'll be nice if with Miley we can give him a bit more development time, let him be a young footballer, a young kid, and not have to throw him in against PSG, Man U and Chelsea in the space of a week like what happened last season. But what are you thinking about the midfield? We're hoping that we're going to get players back available. We'll look pretty strong if everyone's fit, but with Anderson going, do you think there's maybe space there for an addition? Do you think we need to add anyone, or do you think we'll go with what we've got?
Well, the way we play a 4-3-3 with 3 central midfielders. So I think we do need a central midfielder, because the way we play, our wingers generally can't play centrally, so they're not going to fill in if there's an injury crisis in the midfield. And unless you think Trippier is going to become a midfielder, which he has done at times when we have the ball, but not as a permanent option. I think we do need an extra body, and it's probably not going to be someone we're going to spend a lot of money on. It could be a young player, someone we're taking a flyer on, an 18, 19-year-old player from the continent. That's where maybe Paul Mitchell can help. He can maybe find someone who's unproven, raw, 19, 20, athletic traits that suit Eddie Howe. Maybe that's someone we could find. I think it's needed, because God forbid we have another injury crisis in the midfield, we know how Bruno plays and Jolinton plays. They're going to get suspended throughout the season. Bruno, it was a miracle he didn't. I think he just didn't tackle for about 3 months. That's probably why he didn't get suspended. But they get the way they play, they will get suspended throughout the season. So we're going to need to have depth in the centre of the park, unless we're going to change our formation, which I don't think Eddie will. So in that scenario, I think we do need an extra 1 central midfielder.
Because there was a point last season where we were getting ran through in the midfield, and it was in the January, February time, and there was kind of a clamour for a defensive midfielder. And I think Eddie has made it perfectly clear on a few occasions, and he certainly has to journalists who've reported that he sees Bruno as the defensive midfielder. And Bruno is good enough to get forward and be more creative. But I think it is undeniable that his best position is that kind of deep lying number 6 position with 2 midfielders alongside him. That's where he's been world class for us. So I think he's good enough to play that role. And if you wanted to play him in like the number 8, like you've got to call him these days, like I think you'd maybe lose what he brings from a defensive perspective. You know, receiving the ball deep, and he's press resistant. That's the new thing you've got to say about players these days. So he doesn't lose the ball even when he's in his own box, nutmegging people and doing things that give you heart attacks. So you'd miss that if he was a bit further forward. Tonali, you'd think, is ideal for that place on the side of Bruno, and then they can interchange. And I think that might have been the idea when we signed him. But you've also got like attacking midfield. We don't have any sort of really creative number 10 kind of attacking midfielder because we don't play with that sort of system as well. But I wonder if Eddie's going to be thinking, well, we want someone who we can mix things up a bit and who we can play a bit of a different system or a different formation at times. But you know, those kind of players are very expensive, creative players. So like when we're linked with James Maddison, that's his kind of ideal position. But then you have to kind of build your team around those creative players if you're going to use them. So I think that might be some of the things that they're thinking about. But I agree. I think we do actually need another midfielder of some sort. Morgan Gibbs-White is a name that has been around quite a lot. He would be ideal for that sort of like attacking, one of those attacking number 8 positions. And he's English. I know that Eddie Howe likes English players. Forest, I don't know if we've made some sort of agreement or deal with them based on all the shenanigans that went on last week, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is budget there, and it's maybe not a priority position, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him move for someone like him, who can come in and he runs all day and he's got the attributes that Eddie likes. So, like I said, not a priority, but I think an area that if there's money and if there's space, I think we might go for a midfielder of some description. Wingers, Anthony Gordon, what a season he had last season. It's a shame that he's been completely ignored, and I don't know what's going on there, but it's hard not to feel bitter about the way he's been treated. In England, I don't know if he's sort of Gareth Southgate hasn't liked what he's said in interviews because he's been a bit different to other people and to the other players. He's come out and he's just agreed that the players haven't been playing well. He's been restricted to one minute, or I think it was 4 minutes with injury time. So, in which he actually played really well, but he hasn't been seen since then, despite England's troubles. So he's going to be back. I don't think there's anything in these bullshit talks about him having his head turned and wanting to move to Liverpool. So I don't think that's going to happen this season anyway. Harvey Barnes obviously had his injury last season. He's come back. He had good output despite being in and out of the team still. He got 5 goals and 3 assists. Miggy's the big one that we expect might be sold. He's the one who sort of the majority of fans seem to want to see the back of now. And then you've got Jacob Murphy as well. What do you think is going to happen with these positions? And it's really a case of trying to upgrade Miggy, I think, isn't it, this summer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone who's been reporting on the club in the Northeast have said that the right wing is the priority position, and that's the marquee signing that we're going to be targeting is going to be a right winger. So I think it's needed. I think Gordon had such a great season. Imagine we had someone of equivalent that's a tough word, equivalent quality on the other side. That just makes Gordon's life even easier if there's someone else on the other side who's just as good as just as dynamic. So I think right winger, we're going to sign someone who's of that upper echelon name, and it's probably going to be someone from the continent, not someone from England, because the prices in the Premier League are just ridiculous. I mean, I still can't believe we fleeced Forest for 35 million. There's got to be something going on there. There's some sort of dodgy deal with that torrid owner that Forest have, the Greek bloke. I'm not going to say his name, but there must be some dodgy deal that's gone on with that. But from our perspective, I think Miggy, he'll be sold. We'll wish him well. He's been good for the club. He had a great season 2 years ago, but I think for us to progress as a club, we can't be starting Miggy as a right winger anymore. And the fact that we need money as well, we can't just keep him alive. It'd be nice to keep him in the squad, but I don't think we can afford to keep him in the squad. So he's going to have to be sold, and I think we're going to have to splash probably in excess of £50 million on a starting quality right winger.
Yeah, I was looking at a few tweets and threads and things about this position, and there's not really like anyone that really stands out. We play with the inverted wingers, so Gordon's right-footed. Would probably ideally hope that the right wing would be left-footed, who can cut in. That seems to be the way that we want to play. So it's quite hard to find those sorts of players, I think. So hopefully this is where, like I said, Paul Mitchell, he's going to have some contacts or some ideas about what we might be able to do here. And it is just, it sums PSR up that we had Minte, who is a good young player in that position, who another Premier League club is deemed fit to spend 30 million plus pounds on. But we had to sell him just to then a week or two later be looking for someone else who plays in his position. Who, it's just like the whole
probably
thing
double the price as well. Probably spend double the price.
The whole thing's just upside down. But yeah, like Elise would have been perfect, but he looks like he's off to buy. And Pedro Neto is the other one that we seem to be linked with, but he's got his injury problems and he's quite small, and Eddie likes his tall players. So we'll see what happens. But I think that this and the centre back is going to be the two positions where we do spend big. Miggy would be fine to stay around, I think, as a squad option, but he's probably past that point with a lot of fans where people just get sick of him when he does something wrong. So I think for his own benefit, probably, and for the clubs, if we can get some money back from him, because he got that contract extension 18 months ago, it's probably for the best that he moves somewhere where he's going to be appreciated and where he's still going to be able to, maybe at a lower level. If he went back to MLS or Saudi, he'd probably tear it up there, So he's the wrong side of 30 as well now, but he's had a good 5-6 years with us now. So and he'll always be remembered for that crazy goal scoring run he went on in the Champions League season, and for scoring goals in the Champions League as well. He scored the goal against PSG. So yeah, Miggy will go with well wishes when he does go, but I do think it's time for him to move on and for us to upgrade him, and then the meme machine Jacob Murphy can stay there as the backup. He had decent output in terms of assists last season as well. So he's a perfectly serviceable backup player for us, and he's the kind of good player for the culture around the squad. So if we can get someone of Gordon's level on that side, even if it's like a young up and coming player, that'd be amazing business. So let's see what we can do there. And onto the strikers, we've got Alexander Isak, who Chelsea might have tried to pinch, but I don't think that was ever going to happen, no matter how desperate we were for money. And Callum Wilson is probably in the same boat as Miggy. I think he probably needs to go somewhere where he's going to be more appreciated, or where he's going to be able to have, he's going to be the main man. Like, I think he's got the ego for that. So again, if he stays, great, and we know that he can contribute. But if he does stay, do you think we're going to need another striker anyway? Because Wilson just can't be relied on to stay fit, and him and Isak last season were just swapping in and out of who was injured at any time. So what do you think, Wilson's going to stay or go? And do you think we'll sign a new striker anyway?
I think we'll sign a new forward on top of a new right winger. So we'll sign someone who can play out wide and can play up front. I think that'll be ideal, and that sort of covers two positions at once. So it's weird with Wilson. He's obviously got an unbelievable goal scoring record, but he just can't stay fit. Doesn't matter what he says. Doesn't matter what the clubs say. He just can't stay fit, and we just can't keep him around any longer, because it just puts us in a bind that if Isak ends up getting hurt, and we're stuck with nobody because Wilson's just not reliable enough. So if we signed a third striker and Wilson was happy to be a third striker, maybe you'd keep him, but I can't see him happy to be a third striker. So I think the most logical outcome will be we sell him, we sign another versatile forward. Then the club will say, look, we've got Gordon who can potentially play centrally. We've got Isak, obviously, and potentially... Joe Linton can do it again. But so this is the problem when you don't have a good youth system, because this would be a perfect spot for a 17, 18, 19-year-old youth player to sort of fill in where you need. But we just don't have that youth system yet to promote these players. So we're going to have to find that sort of young player at some sort of cost to do it. And I think for me, Wilson's going to go. We're going to get someone who is of the younger variety and someone who can fill in probably multiple positions.
The link with Calvert-Lewin was interesting, because that was definitely a clear link. And I think that was maybe trying to take advantage of Everton's financial position a little bit as well. But also the profile of player, where it's a very different kind of striker to Isak. So somebody who's sort of a target man sort of thing, like for if we need a plan B, if we're chasing the game.
Yeah.
We know that Eddie liked Chris Wood for that reason. And Chris Wood's gone and scored 11, 12 goals for Forest last season.
Again.
So, yeah. So it'll be interesting if we maybe target someone of that profile. Like Man U got Wout Weghorst in on loan. We might do something like that where it's like everyone will be like, why have you brought him? But he sort of does a job for the team when needed. I think that I do think that'll be sort of a consideration. And I wouldn't be surprised if Calvert-Lewin, if we do go back in for him, if the price is more reasonable and if there's money available for us to spend. So yeah, we've still got 2 months or so. There's a good 7-8 weeks left of the transfer window. So we'll see what happens. We'll be jumping on when news does break. We are expecting quite a big summer in terms of incomings now. There's not as much pressure on outgoings after the mania that was the week before last. So I think that's it. Squad audit complete. You can go and maybe get yourself some sleep before you get woken up in a few minutes. It's been good to have you back anyway, Dimi. Very, very nice to have you back.
Cheers, mate. It's great to be back, and hopefully we're back on soon celebrating a new signing for the club.
We will speak to you all soon. Cheers. Bye.